And joining us on the line right now is legal analyst Joe diGenova. Happy New Year to you, Joe. Hope you had a great holiday.
Happy New Year. We had a fabulous holiday.
Oh, well, good. Well, we got a lot of stuff on our plate to talk to you about. We're actually going to have an extended session with you today, Joe.
I accept.
Okay, good, because we're going to save the conversation about Hillary, because that's a whole another kettle of fish.
Yeah, you teased us last week with a prediction for 2016, so we're going to get that soon.
But let's get some of this other stuff off of the discussion list first. Obama is going to have a meeting with his Attorney General today, and they're going to find ways that they can circumvent the regular constitutional process and take actions on guns without having any conversation with Congress about it.
Right. Well, what the president is going to try and do is do by regulation what he cannot do by legislation, because Congress will resist him on illegal gun controls. What he's going to try and do is do more background checks, do things with regard to private sales of guns between a father and son or an uncle and a nephew, all the kinds of things that have previously been precluded from the definition of what is called occasional sales or occasional transfers. And he's going to do it by executive order, and he's going to just allow the Republicans to litigate the question in federal court until after he leaves office. Congress has already passed a spending bill, so they won't be able to take money away from ATF, which is the way they usually try to control a lawless president like the one we have now. So it's going to be rough and tumble, and of course we're going to get a tearful presentation from the president sometime in the next 24 hours.
And Joe, when you say the budget's already been passed, so the legislators who would normally be the ones responsible for, legislating, they can't come up with anything here. They can't cut funding, or they can't revisit any of the. I mean, just because they passed a budget doesn't mean that it's written in stone. Can't they come back and say, hey, about that ATF budget, we've rethought it?
I think they can do that. I'm not sanguine about what the Republicans are willing to do at this point, given the fact that they've fought all the big battles. But there are certainly a number of members in the Republican Party, and even some Democrats, who are going to resist this. And I certainly recommend that they use the budget process any way they can to scuttle funding and make this illegal. But remember, if they pass a piece of legislation, he can veto it.
All right.
And so that's the end of that ball game. So litigation is probably where this is headed.
Well, and that's my next question. If there is litigation, what are the chances that it'll ultimately have to go to the Supreme Court, won't it?
Yes, but it would probably get to the Supreme Court after there was a new president, and if it's a Republican, that Republican is going to nullify every one of these executive orders on the first day after taking the oath. I think there'll be about 60 or 70 executive orders on a Republican president's desk, which will basically reverse every one of these policies. So the president is counting on litigation to slow the process down. You talk about the arrogance of power. You are watching it, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, the Democrats used to be about good government. Now they're about gross government.
All right, let's move, if we could, then to the situation out in Oregon, where some anti-government protesters have taken over a building. It was an abandoned building, but was once the headquarters of a wildlife refuge there. Right. And the FBI is now sent in to negotiate that situation. How is this likely to end?
Well, I hope it's going to end peacefully. This is all about states' rights and property rights and grazing rights, right, water rights, and all that stuff out west. I think when you occupy buildings, you really create a very serious problem for your cause. I think it's a mistake to have confrontations like this with people who believe in property rights. The way to do this is in the courts and litigate appropriately. Having to force the FBI to come in and do things that they should not have to deal with right now when we're dealing with terrorism, I think is bad from a PR standpoint. I don't think it looks good, and I think it's a waste of resources. I'm really against this type of stuff of occupying buildings, but at least they're doing it nonviolently at the moment.
Well, nonviolently at the moment, but armed protesters have come to rally in support of them, and right. Brian says the FBI is going in to negotiate, and I hope that that's what they're going in to do as well. But the FBI is, as you know, as a former U.S. attorney, is not necessarily just there to negotiate. They're there to enforce the law. If this happened on your watch as U.S. attorney, at what point do you have to say, all right, enough is enough? We need to use, some sort of force to relinquish these people from a federal property? Well,
there are two sets of issues here. The people in the building who are not armed, as I understand it, and the people who have come to support them who are armed. Dispersing all of them is a complex issue. It's going to take some time, and the Bureau, believe me, is not interested in drawing their weapons and shooting anybody.
No.
They do not need that, especially after some unfortunate records that they have at Waco and elsewhere. Yeah. So I think what you're going to see is a long period of talking, and hopefully cooler heads will prevail. I hope that the Attorney General uses her influence in a good way this time, which is to admonish the FBI to do whatever it takes necessary not to fire their weapons.
Of course, the difference between Waco and Ruby Ridge, they've gone out of their way to seize a federal building, where Waco and Ruby Ridge, they were just sort of hunkered down in their own private
That is correct.
place.
This involves federal property, so there is a keen federal interest, a legitimate one, and so that's why, in fact, that's why the Bureau's there. Otherwise, this would be handled by local sheriffs and police departments.
We'll keep watching that one, Joe. Again, stay with us. Joe diGenova is going to give us his opinion on Hillary Clinton's 2016, which might be quite interesting. But I want to ask you another legal issue in the news. Bill Cosby obviously got arraigned last week on charges that, like a week before the statute of limitations was up on it, and now the news is that Camille Cosby has been ordered to give a deposition in a civil case. I thought that wives can't be forced to testify against their husbands.
Generally speaking, that is true. It's called the spousal privilege. However, she was not only his spouse, she was his business manager, his sole business manager. So she can be forced to testify about conversations related to business and about other things which have nothing to do with being married. She actually waived part of her privilege by becoming his one and only business manager.
Oh.
And so therefore, her testimony in all of these cases is going to be forcible. She can be forced to testify about things related to that relationship, and presumably that will include how to expend funds, how to pay off people, how to shut them up, all sorts of things.
So she may have some real internal knowledge of payments that have been made to some of these women over the years.
Absolutely, and notwithstanding any orders of silencing that, this is a criminal case, and the criminal law believe me, any gag orders which have been imposed as part of civil settlements will be overridden by the criminal process.
Yeah, this has been a very interesting set of developments that's happened. Were you surprised to see it take place?
I was, because here's what happened, though. Once the deposition of Bill Cosby was released in this woman's case, I don't think the prosecutor had any choice. I know he's been criticized by by Cosby's attorneys for bringing a case, but under no circumstances could he walk away from this case now. It's different than when this case was first reviewed a year or two ago, when this deposition by Bill Cosby, where he admits having sexual relations with her and giving her drugs, I mean, that basically made this a case that had to be brought, politics or not. This was a case that required prosecution.
All right, so we want to talk to you about Hillary because there are new developments in the email scandal, and you have some things that you want to share with us. So hang on to the phone right now, and everybody stay with us.
Jill, we often hear you don't have Joe diGenova on enough.
Well,
here we go.
You get a double dose.
That's right.
A 2-barrel load of Joe diGenova.
What a way to start the year.
That's right.
Oh, wow.